In this video, let's learn about creating a custom middleware class. So first of all, what is the reason of creating custom middleware class? So if we look at our code, let's open up our Visual Studio and look at the existing middleware that we have been creating so far. And you would be able to see that the code looks very messy. So I have this file and it contains how many? 6 middlewares, I believe. 6 middlewares. And they're all contained within the program.cs file. And you know what is the purpose of program.cs file? It is for configuring our Castro server, our web application, and to add middleware to the pipeline. Right? For example, one of the built-in middleware component is just as simple as specifying this. For example, use routing or use course, right? Use authentication. It is as simple as this. If we are adding the middleware and at the same time add all of the implementation logic of the middleware component, then it's really crowding this program.cs file. The implementation details need to be extracted and put it to somewhere else. And that's the purpose of why we have this. Let's delete all of these 3 lines, recover it back. There are different ways to organize the code and extract the implementation details into another file. For example, there's extension method. You can create an extension method. You can create a class based on convention, or you can create a custom middleware class that implements a interface. All of them are very similar, and they actually do the same thing. My favorite way of organizing the implementation details in different files is to use the custom middleware class. I don't think it makes sense to show you all 3 ways of organizing the implementation details. I think it makes sense to show you one of the ways. And my favorite way is to use custom middleware class. And why this is my favorite way, I have a reason for it. So this custom middleware class implements from the iMiddleware interface. And that makes the intent of this class very obvious. So if you were to follow the convention way, which is to create a class and just create it based on convention. So it's not, the intent of this class is not very obvious, right? It's not very obvious. And you have to know the convention. Whereas if you just implement an interface, you are forced to implement the method or methods that is specified within the interface. So your intent becomes very clear. And then when you use it, you just need to register the class as a service. So that's why I like using this approach. And to use this approach, you have 2 steps. The first one is to create a class which implements the interface. And the second step is to register class as a service. So let's jump into Visual Studio and try to do those 2 things. Let's jump into Visual Studio here and let's actually create a folder. Now that we are trying to organize our code, it does not make sense to put all of the files in the root folder. So if we are creating middlewares, then we can just say middleware components, create a folder like this, and then create a middleware class inside the folder. So I'm just going to call it my custom middleware. You can call it anything you want. The only thing you need to really pay attention to is you need to implement the iMiddleware. And once you do that, you see this light bulb here. You can click on this and then click on implement interface. An easier way to do this is to do control dot, and which does the same thing. And then I'm going to just hit enter, right? Because the implement interface is already highlighted. If this is not the one that I want to go, I'm just going to use my keyboard arrow keys to go down, and I go to the item that I need to do and then just hit enter. So once I hit enter, this method that is defined inside the interface is automatically implemented for me. Of course, the implementation details is not there, right? Because if I right click on this and pick definition, I can see that the definition of the middleware interface only has one method, which is the invoke async method. So here I can remove this. Now, if you observe the signature of this method, you can see this is basically the same thing as what we have in the Lambda expression. We have HTTP context and we have the request delegate for the next middleware, right? So we have the same thing here. And basically, if you just want to implement a middleware, you just put your logic right in here by following the same stuff that we have went through before. So for example, if I just copy this over to put it over here, and then I'm gonna just say my custom middleware, and I'm gonna remove the number, and over here I'm gonna say my custom middleware. I'm gonna remove the number too, and now I'm gonna add the async keyword. The async keyword enables us to call the await keyword. So if you want to use await keyword for a async function, then you need to use async keyword, because async keyword enables us to use the await keyword. And everything after the await keyword, like the line after the await keyword, is a continuation of this async method. Okay, so now we have 3 of them, and this is our implementation details of our my custom middleware. Of course, for your middleware, there's going to be way complicated logic here, but this is just for demonstration purpose. And so far, we have finished our first, which is to implement this logic, right? Which is to create a class that implements the interface. Now we can move on to the second step, which is to register the class as a service. Okay, so let's go to program.cs. And that's why I'm saying program.cs, the main purpose of this is to configure our application. Now it's time to configure our application. We need to let our application know that we have a custom middleware class ready for use. And how do we do that? We need to use the builder object. And we're going to say builder.services.add. There's different ways to add it. We can add transient, we can add singleton, we can add scope. And these are the lifetime management of the service, or I have to say maybe it's called lifespan management. But later, when we talk about dependency injection, we're going to go deeper into this. Right now, I'm going to just use transient. And I'm going to just put my class here, my custom middleware, and that's it, right? So this is how I register it. And there is the third step, and the third step is just to use the middleware. So this is when we use the use method, right? And the use method, the run method, they are the method that help us to use the middleware. And for our purpose, for example, let's remove this use when, right? And let's add our custom middleware between middleware number 1 and middleware number 2. And how do we do that? We're going to say app.use, and this time we have a brand new method that is called use middleware. And then here, I just need to specify the name of my class. So when I do this, when I say use middleware and specify my class, and when the request is received and forwarded to here, ASP.NET Core is going to know that it needs to instantiate a middleware. And the name of that middleware class is my custom middleware. And then it goes into the services collection here to grab instance from there. And basically how this works is that we specify the type. Right? We provided the type into the services collection. And when that type is needed to be instantiated, it goes into the services collection to see whether the type is already registered there. If it's already registered, it's going to instantiate And there is a lifespan management factor there that we're going to go into when we talk about dependency injection. But so far, you just need to understand that we register the class type and put it into the collection. And then when we need it, right, ASP.NET Core will go into the services collection to grab the type. Only the type that is already registered with ASP.NET Core can be used. Okay, so here, before the class is used, it needs to be instantiated. Then it goes to the services collection and see that it's already registered, and then it instantiates the class and becomes an object, and then it triggers that middleware. How does it trigger the middleware? It calls the invoke async method. That's how it all works. And let's run this application and observe that the custom middleware is being used. All right, so now you can see that because we didn't create a branch, right? We didn't create a branch based on conditions. So all the path works, all the URL works. So of course the root URL also works, and you can see that the first middleware is triggered and the custom middleware is also triggered. And then it goes to the second, third, and then it comes back to the second, and then it comes back to the custom middleware. Then it returns to the first one. And after that, you know what is happening, right? Everything returned to the browser. And that's everything I want to cover in this video. You just need to remember that in order to create a custom middleware class, it's very simple, 2 steps. The first step, actually, you can say that there's 3 steps, right? The first step is to create the class that implements the interface. Which interface? The middleware interface. And just implement it as per normal. The second step is to register the middleware class as a service class. So it's stored in the service collection. And the third step is to use the middleware. And then you have to use middleware at the correct place. The order of placing these use methods or run method, it matters, right? You put it here or here, it makes a huge difference. And when you want to use your custom middleware, you just use middleware method and then provides the type. And your middleware will be used in the pipeline. That's everything I want to cover in this video. If you have any questions, please let me know. If not, I will see you in the next one.